welcome or welcome back to my channel. We are going to be looking at some books about neurodiversity today, and this is because there is a wonderful creator here on YouTube called Curious Cat, and I will link her channel in the description and I'll pop up her name somewhere around here. Anyway, she has come up with the Neurovember Readathon, which is basically celebrating neurodiversity and neurodivergent authors by reading their works in November. And so basically, I want to share some books by neurodivergent authors that I like, and I've got mostly nonfiction here, but I do have a couple of fiction recommendations as well. If you've clicked on this video, you probably know what neurodivergent means. It covers a range of conditions, and there's not really a general consensus of the conditions it covers. Sometimes it's easier to say neurodivergent, and especially if it means otherwise I have to be like, oh, I'm autistic and I have combined ADHD and dysgraphia and OCD and anxiety disorder and panic disorder. It's just, it's just easier. Anyway, by coincidence, just a lot of the books that I found are by autistic people and people with ADHD, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying that you have to have these conditions to be neurodivergent. That's not what I'm saying. It just so happens that those are mostly what these books are on. Anyway, I feel like that was maybe not my best intro, but we're going to go with it. So I want to start, first of all, with actually my son's book. And this is one that features a variety of neurodivergent conditions. And it's called Wonderfully Wired Brains by Louise. And it's an introduction to the world of neurodiversity. And this very much looks at some of the positive aspects of having a neurodivergent brain, because we know, like, if you're watching this and you're neurodivergent yourself, which if you've clicked on the video, probably quite a high chance that you are. We all know that being neurodivergent comes with struggles. However, a lot of us feel that it has some benefits as well, even if they don't necessarily outweigh the struggles. And this goes into the benefits as well as the struggles, which I think is really great, particularly for neurodivergent children. Because, as a child, when you're neurodivergent, you hear enough about what's wrong with you, and you get given a lot of very unhelpful labels. And so it's nice to have the positive aspects pointed out as well. I'm not really in the camp of people who are like, it's a superpower, because I find that being neurodivergent has created far too much hardship in my life to feel that way. But I've also accepted that there are some benefits of some of the conditions that I have. I'm going to try and show you just a few pages of this to show you the sort of things in it. Okay, so in here we have OCD is covered, and I will say there is a little bit of a stereotypical image which I don't love in here, which is the ordered pens. I have OCD and I could not give a monkeys about the order of my pens. But there are obviously subtypes of OCDs that are heavily focused on things like that. It's not one that affects me, and it's always the one that people think of. But yeah, it has some quite simple, just like a little page dedicated to it here, and then it goes on to bipolar disorder. It's also got about cerebral palsy, it's got about epilepsy, it's got autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorders, dyscalculia, dysgraphia is covered. There's a dyslexia. It's got a part on embracing differences and things about what our brains are actually really good at. So, for example, if you're autistic, you normally have really great pattern recognition. If you have OCD, you're normally really very creative, and you normally have high empathy. These are generalizations, of course. There's also got a bit about famous people who are neurodivergent. Everyone from Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye, to Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer who has ADHD. It's also got basically some kind of people we think might have been neurodivergent, like Mozart and Harriet Tubman and Florence Nightingale. Yeah, it has this section on, it's called Brilliant Brains in History, and basically it's historical people who are suspected to have been neurodivergent. If the frame and light has just changed, my light and camera just died at the same time, which is just typical. And then I came back on, and I forgot to press record, and I finished talking about these books, and then I was like, that camera is not recording. Anyway, How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davies. And Casey Davies is a content creator and she's brilliant. She has ADHD and I think her channel basically blew up from her very bravely showing her real life, very messy house, and she took a lot of flack for it, and she had people calling her all sorts of names like lazy and being really cruel to her, frankly. Carried on anyway, and she helps so many people, and I think particularly women with ADHD, to feel better about themselves and to not feel like you are failing. And I thought this book was great because it gives strategies in here that you don't get in your typical kind of home maintenance or sort of organizational book. Although it's not neurodivergent specific, I think a lot of neurodivergent people will relate to this and the strategies in it. It's broken down really nicely and you can dip in at any point. And it's also got bits about like being kind to yourself and being self-compassion. And this might sound obvious, but it wasn't to me. It talks about how taking care of your house and mess is morally neutral. Doing the laundry is morally neutral. It's not a moral issue to have not done your dishes. Like, you might not feel great about it, and practically it might suck to have no clean dishes, but it's nothing morally wrong with you. Because, you know, I think as people in general, and especially as women or, I don't know, female presenting people in general, you can feel this pressure like you should be a certain way because society has kind of drilled that into you. And you often also under the impression that it's easy for everyone else and what's wrong with me. And that's probably just not true. And yeah, it's put across as like, as kind of a moral thing. And I really like how she says it about how like mess is morally neutral. Now, I will say that at the time I read this, I'd already got things pretty much under control. And I think it would have been more helpful back when I was a bit younger. For me, what actually worked was getting rid of 80% of the things that I owned. And I see it as if my inventory, as in everything in my house, is too high, then I can't cope. And my inventory threshold, like my clutter threshold, is a lot lower than most people. So I just can't have that level of stuff in my house. And this is definitely my most cluttered room just because of all my books. However, all the books stay nice and neat on their shelves, so it's absolutely fine. If they didn't have a place, that would be very different. She also talks about some kind of little hacks that you can do if you're struggling with things like depression. These aren't things to do necessarily long term, but they're things that can really help you get self-care done while you're depressed. So one of the things like she says about, like, for example, when you're depressed, you can use pre-pasted toothbrushes, and that makes sure that you are going to do your teeth if like it removes those little barriers and those little extra steps. And there's just some handy little tips like that. And yeah, I really recommend this, not just to neurodivergent people. I mean, especially, yeah, definitely if you have ADHD in particular and you struggle with housekeeping, or if anything that affects your executive function, and this could be really helpful. But I also think this is very helpful if you struggle with anxiety and depression and it affects your ability to clean and organise. And, you know, if you're just having a rough time, then I think this can be really good. It's also great for anyone who wants to unlearn anything to do with mess being like a moral thing. Next up, I have a autistic memoir written by Sarah Gibbs, and this is Drama Queen, One Autistic Woman and a Life of Unhelpful Labels. Now, I think a lot of neurodivergent people, so whether you're autistic or you have a different condition, you might really relate to being given all these different labels. And I really related to this book. I thought this was an absolutely brilliant memoir. It goes through all of the labels we're given, including, so the title, Drama Queen. I massively relate to this. Dramatic was one of the labels that I got applied to me all the time. Especially in school. I used to have, I had some like meltdowns in school, and I had giant panic attacks in front of people. Kids would like, a couple of times kids did like impressions of me having them, or where they would like basically walk past me and pretend that they couldn't breathe and then like flap their hands about and stuff like that. And they would say that I was being really dramatic, really over the top. And yeah, the Drama Queen label got applied to me quite a lot, as did just things like too much. And I think these are labels that a lot of people, a lot of neurodivergent people in particular, will relate to. And I found this very healing, and I found it very relatable, and it was just nice to see someone else who'd had those same things applied. And it doesn't just talk about her school experience, it goes into her adult experience. And there's part here about how she talks about working in an office and how difficult that was, and I really related to all of that as well. And she talks about trying to get on with her co-workers I've had the same trouble in offices. It's not that I've never had friends in offices. I absolutely have. And I've also met friends who I've really liked, or, whether they're neurodivergent too or not. But I've had difficult experiences that I related to. I take things incredibly literally. And I don't do things if you don't kind of point it out. I don't pick up on social cues very well. I'm just going to give you a little example. I'm sorry for this tangent. But I used to work in this office, and I just started, and unfortunately no one liked me straight away just because of a couple of incidents that I didn't pick up on. So she was coming down the stairs, she's carrying these boxes, and she was like, "Oh, these boxes, they're really heavy." And I was like, "Oh." I was just like sort of standing there, and she was like, "They are so heavy." And I was like, And in my head I was thinking, "Oh, okay, like how do I respond to this?" And I'm always running through my head of what's a normal response, how to respond. It takes me a little bit longer sometimes to process things and work out how to respond. And it was actually about 20 minutes later that I was like, "Oh, she wanted me to help her with those boxes." She didn't say that though, so I didn't get it. If she'd have said, "Please help me with these boxes, they were heavy," then obviously I would have done. But yeah, what actually happened is another woman came in and helped her with the boxes, and they both gave me a really dirty look. And that is something I can pick up on. I can pick up on when people are giving me really dirty looks. And I didn't know why, and it took me a while. And then unfortunately that meant that people in the office already didn't like me. So that kind of sucked. So I really relate to some of the experiences in this. I've also had trouble with bosses for the same reason. And she speaks about her literal thinking in this. And yeah, I had a job once where I was waiting to have I'm sorry, I know this is a tangent. I'm going to go off on another little tangent here. But yeah, I had a job. I was waiting for a performance evaluation, and I knocked on. It was exactly the right time. And my boss came out and he said, "I'm not ready for you yet. Wait outside." So I went back out of the office, and I went outside. Like, I went outside the building. There was a garden, and I went and sat in the garden because she told me to wait outside. Now, I didn't realise he meant outside the office. So normally, apparently, when someone says wait outside, they mean go and sit outside of the chairs on their office. I didn't get that. So I went and sat in the garden, and I was there for 35 minutes, and I was having a lovely time. Okay. I was having a nice, relaxing time in the garden. And I was thinking, I'm not really that bothered about when he comes and gets me now because I'm having a nice time. He came outside and found me like 35 minutes later, and he was like, "What the are you doing out here? You're supposed to be in the meeting." And I was like, "I turned up at the meeting. You told me to go outside." And he's like, "No, I told you to wait outside." And I was like, "And I am doing." And he was completely dumbfounded by it. He didn't see how that miscommunication could have happened. But that's the sort of miscommunication that happens to me all the time. And, she talks about it in dates. I've definitely had it in dating life. I have had the thing where someone invited me back for a coffee, and a guy I met in the bar invited me back to his flat for a coffee. This is when I was like 19. And we get into his flat, and I sit down, and he's just like looking at me. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "Where's my coffee?" And he's like, "Oh, you actually wanted a coffee?" I'm like, "Yeah, you invited me back here for coffee. So," and he's like, "Oh, I don't actually have any coffee in." And I'm like, "Well, why would you invite me for coffee then?" I was so confused. And I learned that was code. He was a very nice guy. He was a bit confused, but he didn't apply any pressure or anything. He was just a bit confused by the kind of misunderstanding. We did end up dating after that. And we always found it quite funny. And once he knew me, he knew that he would need to be more literal for me to get it. But yeah, everyone I told that story to was like, "Oh my God, how could you not know what that meant?" And I was like, I wanted my coffee. Anyway, so I really relate to this. I'm so sorry, I've gone off a massive tangent. I don't know whether to cut that or leave that in. Whatever. You can always skip it. But yeah, she goes through all of these things, her literal mindedness, and I related to this so much, and it made me think about all of my past experiences. There's, like I say, there's a handful of them there. And yeah, I really like that one. Next up, I have another nonfiction, and this one is written by an autistic author with ADHD, and this is Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. He also really struggles with anxiety and depression, and I really liked this. It's like part memoir. It goes into some of his stories, But it's also like tips. Again, it's broken down really nicely. It's so comforting. It's just so comforting. And it gives you like little bits of life advice. And I don't think that when he wrote this that he knew he was autistic with ADHD. I think that he knew at the time that he had really severe anxiety and that he'd had depression. However, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure when I looked into this a while ago, I saw an article in the paper and he was diagnosed, I believe, after this. However, when I read this, I could tell that he had autism and ADHD. It comes through. It really comes through. I thought this was brilliant. It was very relatable. And I think, again, I don't think you have to have autism and ADHD to relate to this. I think if you have anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, I think you might relate to this. It's got the bits about his experience and bits about hard times, but it's also got the things that you can do, things that give you hope. It's got kind of funny bits in it as well. There's like kind of a little skit in here about a therapy session in the year 2049, and like it's kind of funny and sad at the same time. And I really like it. It's got little chapters on how to be happy and how to find the things that are more important, and the link between like nature and finding your happiness and being less anxious. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So yeah, recommend that. And the next one is a fiction book, but with a real experience mixed in. I should have done this in some form of order. No, never mind. This one is written by an 11-year-old girl. You know what? I've just realised I was about to say an 11-year-old girl, but there's two authors on here. So it's Libby Scott and Rebecca Westcott. And for some reason, I only think of Libby Scott, and I don't know why that is now. I think it could be the case that it was a child who was helped by an older person to write this. Anyway, Libby is autistic, and this is the story of Tally, who is diagnosed with autism. She is 11. It's very realistic about how you think when you're autistic and the sort of thoughts, the way you process things, and I really liked it. I was very upset reading some of the reviews on this, though, because there were some people who just didn't get it, and they were saying Tally was being unreasonable, that she was being spoiled, and she was so determined to get like what she wanted that she couldn't think of how she was affecting her sister, and why was she acting like this? And, you know, sometimes people just aren't going to get it. I thought it was really well done. I really related to her as a kid, and even as an adult, I still relate to things in here. Just one example is to Tally in here. There's a scene where like her mom says, you know, like they'll be ready in 2 minutes, and Tally is like timing it to the 2 minutes, and she's really upset when those 2 minutes come and go, because her family, they just meant it as in like, yeah, we'll be about 2 minutes. But to Tally, she's going to take that very literally, and she likes things to be precise and to be exact and to have this routine. So she gets very upset, and she'll get upset with people, and she doesn't understand. To her, it's like you've lied to her because you said you'd be there in 2 minutes and then you weren't, and now like she can't trust you. She doesn't really understand it being said casually, and that's just an example of the way you can process things differently when you're on the spectrum. She doesn't come across like how some of the reviewers said as like bratty and entitled at all. She's a little girl who is struggling to find her place and is struggling with being autistic, basically. However, it's not all doom and gloom. It literally just shows you her life and what it's like for her at school. And it does show how it's kind of hard for her sister as well, because her and her sister, they can struggle to understand each other. Her sister's neurotypical. I just thought this was really nicely done. And I think, you know, if you're an autistic adult, you might see yourself in this as a child, or if you have an autistic child, you might see a bit of your child in this. Obviously, all autistic people are as different as all holistic people, which is another word for non-autistic. So, you know, you might not relate to everything in here, or you might not relate your own child, if they're on the spectrum, to everything in here. But I do think it'll be relatable to a lot of people. I feel like I just said that in such a convoluted way. The next one I have is also a fiction book, and that is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I've spoken about this a few times on my channel. I absolutely love it. So Olivia Atwater is autistic, and the main character in this, she is autistic coded. It's a historical fantasy romance kind of book, and it's very whimsical. Absolutely love this. So the main character, she loses half of her soul because of like a fairy deal gone wrong. And that means that she processes things differently. She feels things differently. Her emotions show differently. And she's very heavily autistic coded. She's very relatable, to me at least. And I know it sounds a bit offensive, as though, oh, you're saying that autistic people are missing half a soul. No, honestly, it doesn't come across like that at all. Everything in this is done very positively. And like I say, the author is autistic herself. I just absolutely love this book. It's so heartwarming. And I think many people would enjoy this. This is another one, like, you definitely do not need to be neurodivergent to enjoy this book or to relate to the character. This is a very well loved book. And yeah, I've spoken about this in quite a few other videos on my channel, so I'm not going to go into it more, but I absolutely love this and would recommend this to anyone who likes kind of cozy fiction. But you know what, no, I don't want to call it cozy, because cozy sometimes puts me off a bit because it hasn't got as much plot as I would like. And I love this. This is got quite a lot of plot. It's also got social commentary. You learn a little bit about history. But it is undeniably whimsical and cozy at the same time. Lovely romance in this as well. None of the sort of toxic relationships dynamics. So yeah, really like that. Finally, a little bit random. This one is Chris Packham's Birdwatching Guide. And it's called From Beginner to Birder. And this is one of the books that got me a little bit into bird watching. And Chris Packham is diagnosed with autism. And if you haven't seen it, he does a programme on the BBC, and it's called, I think it's called Inside Autistic Minds. I really liked that. It showed a variety of different people who all diagnosed with autism and different perspectives. And it was really educational. And yeah, I really, really liked it. Anyway, he is a nature enthusiast and he's written this guide to bird watching, and it's so good and it's got such great images, helpful to identify birds. Obviously, this will only be, you'll only like this if you're into bird watching or want to get into bird watching. But I find bird watching, it's just very relaxing. So I think it's a nice hobby to get into. And I got into it because we were on holiday and we were in the woods and in these lodges, and I got so excited to see this. There was this bird and I didn't know what it was at first, and then I realised it was a blue jay, and it kept coming in right into the garden, and I kept getting so excited to see it, and I would like run out all excitedly every time it came. And then I got some binoculars so I could see it better. And then I got really excited about identifying different birds, and then I wanted a bird bath in the garden, and I got really excited about seeing the different birds coming in, and then I bought myself quite a few bird watching guides, and this has been one of my favourites. And yeah, my son likes this one as well, likes looking at the pictures, and he's learned how to identify a few different birds from this as well. It's also got some tips about what you can put in your garden and like feeders and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely aimed at beginners. But it's also like a nice identification guide, and you can see it's got like some very nice images. Anyway, those are my recommendations. I would love to know your recommendations. Do you have any favourite books by neurodivergent authors or that feature neurodivergent characters? And also perhaps there's some books on your TBR that are by neurodivergent authors or have neurodivergent characters. I think neurodivergent is like just a pretty broad term. So I think, you know, you could reasonably include characters that are dealing with things like a lot of anxiety and things like that. And, you know, before I got diagnosed, that's what I was diagnosed with anyway. The very first diagnosis I got were when I was younger, and they were generalised anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder. And then I started getting misdiagnoses such as borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder. It was a whole journey, you know. It wasn't a straightforward route to diagnosis. And then finally, I was doing my master's degree by the time that I got the correct diagnosis, and the mental health nurse at uni was like, I think you have autism. And I was like, what? I generally only knew about stereotypes of autism back then. But yeah, it was kind of a journey to get there. And I've forgotten why I started telling you that. I'm going to go. Thank you to Kat from Curious Cat. Please do check out her channel, because I think this is it's a really great idea. I mean, Neurovember. That's a little bit of a tongue twister, but, you know, I think I got it then. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, why the heck not? You know? No, I'm joking, but do subscribe if you want to. Another experience that I had was just in trying to get a job. I was doing a phone interview once, and the woman stopped me partway through the phone interview, and she was like, can you sound more excited? And I was like, sorry. And she's like, you speak very monotone. I need you to just sound more excited. Uh, and I was really thrown by it. And yeah, I tried to add some excitement into my voice, which is what I do now. I try and add some oomph into my voice. It's pretty hard. I'm naturally fairly flat. And she stopped me again, and she was like, oh, you're still just, you know, you're just speaking really monotone. You've got a really boring voice. And she's like, you know, it won't be great for phone calls. And I was like, well, I don't want to answer any of them anyway. Didn't get that job, and I'm very glad that I didn't get that job. Another example of literal thinking in interviews. Someone once asked me, this was a man doing an interview, and this is for one of the first law firms I was being interviewed at, and I can't remember what exactly the question was, but he basically asked something about, he'd phrased it about what would I do if I was in his shoes, and I think it was in a certain scenario. And I do know what the phrase means, and I think maybe because it was a high pressure thing of an interview, I took it really literally, and I was like, it basically says something like, why would I be wearing your shoes? Like, they'd be about 3 sizes too big for me. Like, our feet don't look the same size at all. He just stared at me like, and then he burst out laughing. So he thought it was a joke. So that worked out okay for me. He thought I was pretty funny. People sometimes think I'm funny when I'm not trying to be funny. And then when I try and be funny, they don't think I'm funny. I've told way too many stories in this one. I'm sorry. Oh, cut that out.